Welcome to XYZ.
Welcome to XYZ After Dark.
Oh, it's like
because
the Peach Pit.
We're recording this at night.
At night. Anyway, hi, I'm Christy, your Gen X host.
I'm Faith, your Gen Z host. I wanted to talk about financial literacy with my mom because I don't know if you guys have been following the news, but it feels like everything is so expensive all the time.
All the time. And I am 100% self-taught when it comes to financial literacy. Not entirely. I had one class in high school, I think, on economics.
I had a class in
Mr. Cutlip, if you're listening.
Mr. Cutlip!
You're my hero.
My G!
Anyway, I took a high school class in economics. I actually was an economics major for like a minute and a half in college. I dodged that bullet. Mm-hmm. But I grew up in a house with a single working mom, widowed single working mom with a high school diploma. And so our financial literacy was like, cross your fingers, hope for the best, and accept that you're not really going to like have more than your means, but be really thankful for the fact that you have the means to at least have like a home and food and all of that.
There's a little Catholicism in there too, of like, not only are you not going to have more, but you better be grateful for what you have as well.
Sure. Because it was way more than my mom, who grew up in the Great Depression. So, you know, we had more than she could have ever
using the tinfoil.
Yes. So as a young adult, I numerous times got myself into extraordinary amounts of debt and then got myself out of extraordinary amounts of debt. And so I kind of, not even consciously, a little bit consciously, was determined to at least help my kids learn more. I can't promise that they're going to be better at it than I was. I hope they are.
Well, I think this is a good kind of jumping off point, because something that I've kind of noticed is amongst my cohort is like, when you talk about debt, a lot of people my age, depending on like economic circumstances, I find that we are getting credit cards later. Like, I didn't open a credit card until I graduated from college. I did everything with I had a bank account, but I did everything with my bank card. I didn't literally, this year is when or 2025 is when I opened my first credit card. And I think, well, for me personally, that was because I was really scared of debt. I was really worried about debt. And I didn't. Yes. But I think that's kind of the tricky thing, is that and this is not you specifically, but like maybe broadly, is that we, Gen Z, heard our parents talk about credit card debt and how it's so easy to get into credit card debt and how it's so hard to get yourself out of credit card debt. And we had a conversation kind of early on in me having my credit card where you said, you're really good with deadlines, so you're going to be fine at having a credit card because you're
deadlines so much,
or like,
but like you're just disciplined. You were much more disciplined with your money than I ever was at your age, and probably the anxiety helped. You're a little afraid, but you know, there's like a fine line between. So first of all, let me make full disclosure, full disclaimer. I have zero like professional and like expertise in this. This is just like the life lessons I've learned, and how as a parent I tried to be much more open about finances. I know my husband and I, this was a fight early on, was like, he's very much a like, you don't talk about money guy. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately for him, he's married to me. And so that didn't last very long. But we chose to be a little more transparent about certain things so that our kids understood, because I feel like there's this. So I make no claims to have any kind of financial knowledge as far as like what financial literacy should be or what you should be doing. This is just something we talked about off camera that Faith was like, we should do an episode about this, because what's the difference in like, and is there a difference in like what we have faced at our different stages of life, when I was 20 versus when she's 20, when I was 23 versus when she's 23, and like, what did I hope she would take away and what did I hope she'd learn on her own? Because I wasn't very good at it to begin with. So that's kind of where we're coming from this week, is like, we're banding about financial literacy as if either one of us has any full idea what that means or what that is. But I think there's a lot more to it also. Like, I've learned through the years, there's like your sort of money story that comes from, your history, your trauma, your growing up stuff. So clearly we have different histories in that. But I'd be curious sort of I'm learning in this podcast that a lot of the things that I thought I was sort of teaching or passing on, get muddied up by the rest of the world too. So
I also want to disclaim that I am speaking from a place of economic privilege.
Absolutely.
So my talking about, disparity is the wrong word, but it's the only word that comes to mind. Between how you grew up and how I grew up, we grew up in two entirely different economic circumstances.
Yeah.
Like, I grew up with two college-educated parents, both of which
working
parents. I was just about to say, both of which who worked my entire childhood through adulthood still. And there were times where it was hard, but
for sure,
I was never concerned that we weren't going to have a place to sleep. I was never concerned that we weren't going to have a place to eat. I always had clothes that fit. I was not, squeezing into two small shoes for a year before, making that last. So when I speak about, and I think this is often something that comes up with credit cards, is that I was fortunate enough to be in a position where I didn't need to open a credit card.
Yeah.
Because the money I made babysitting or working retail jobs in high school, it was money that didn't have to go to helping keep the lights on.
Yeah.
Or helping feed myself or helping take care of my siblings or various other things that
it was your money.
It was my money.
You made it and you did what you wanted with it, which
Yes.
maybe wasn't the best decision as a parent. I know a lot of people who helped their kids right from the beginning open a savings account, make them do. When they were really little, we tried the envelope system where they saved and then could spend and then wanted to give away to charity. And actually some of that stuck because my middle one still, I think, she's terrible with money. But she
makes a donation every year.
She makes donations, yeah. She still sort of gives it away. So that's kind of nice that stuck. But I didn't know what I was doing. And I was trying to keep them all from the pain that I had experienced with just bad decisions. Look, some of it's bad decisions, some of it was being young and ignorant, and some of it was the way the world was when we were young and ignorant was sort of we were white and middle income, both working, and so banks were you can have whatever you want. So, when it was time for us to buy a house or time for us to buy a new car, or time for us to whatever, nobody said no. And so without the education to go with that, it was they're just going to let me do all this stuff. So we learned the hard way a lot of lessons financially. And we spent most of our marriage and most of their childhood just trying to survive day-to-day life. And again, from a complete place of privilege, not survive eat, but there were days early on when they were very little where we had to make a little bit go a very long way. But we sort of worked our way out of that and were able to work our way out of that too. So, in the later years of their teenage and Faith's childhood versus her youngest sibling's childhood are very different. And because we were in different places in our careers and our financial world. So, when we talk about the difference of, when she's 23 versus when I was 23, I don't know that it's so much generational as it is circumstantial and how I grew up and her dad to some degree, because her dad was much more sort of stereotypical middle class upbringing, two parents. His mom didn't work when he was younger, but she did go back to work when the kids were all in school, and so they had two incomes, and they had a little different childhood than me, but not extravagant by any means. They all as kids had to work for their money. These guys all had to start working as soon as they could. So there was some of that responsibility that was the same for all of us, but generationally, but some of the other stuff that they never had to worry about is very different than.
And I wonder also if, and we've talked about this a little bit, is that some of it is, and not to be childhood disposition on your parenting podcast to someone who hasn't had kids, but I remember being 14, 15, 16 even, and getting babysitting job. I started consistently babysitting when I was 13, and that was what I did on the weekends. Every weekend for a couple hours, I was going to somebody's house. I was watching their kids, and that was because, and I don't even know if we had a conversation. We must have had a conversation about it, where when my friends wanted to go out after school and go get a Starbucks latte or go to the mall and see a movie. I feel like some of this is me, is I was like, well, I'm going to need money to do that. And I think my sister was better at asking you first if you guys would be willing to give her money.
She still is.
She still is. And that, it's not that it never crossed my mind, but it definitely felt to me like a last resort. Like I don't, some of this is my own stuff.
Well, I think it's an oldest kid thing too, because your dad's the same way.
Yeah, I never
He's like,
wanted
the minute
to...
he could start working, he did, and he didn't want to ever ask his parents for anything. He'll tell you now because he didn't want them to know what he was doing. But it was more like an independent, like, I don't want them to have to worry.
And I think for me, it was a little bit like I wasn't doing anything bad. But I think I remember we had a conversation about this where like I was 17. It was the summer before my senior year of high school. And I had bought clothes for myself. And this happened twice in my life. I bought clothes once when I was, I think, 12. And then I bought clothes again when I was 17. And we had the same conversation where, like, you and Dad did not like the clothes that I had bought. You either didn't like you didn't like the way they fit. You didn't like some of it is like...
we talked about the shirt on another podcast episode.
Mm-hmm. And some of it is like, sometimes my dad pretends to be much more traditional than he is and is like, I don't know how I feel about that outfit.
That's
like
a very short skirt.
Yes, those things.
It's like he thinks he's supposed to say that.
Yes. But what it came down to was like, look, I'm sure if the thing had been really inappropriate, you guys probably would have said, stop, don't do that. But I remember so clearly you saying, this is what having your own money means. Like, this is what her having, if she has bought them, at 13, even though I had you were driving me to the mall to buy the clothes that you didn't like.
You probably paid a fraction of them too. I'm sure I paid for the entire thing.
Yes. I do remember thinking
they all thought they bought things that they didn't really buy.
But this is something that I like. I like knowing that I'm in control over this.
Yeah.
I get to wear these clothes because I bought these clothes.
Yeah.
They
can't say no to me.
Yeah, they can't tell me I can't have.
Which is a really funny parenting moment because we never said no.
No.
So it's so interesting. Like, I just wrote about this on Substack about how, like, I'm learning as an adult, as she's an adult, I'm learning things that I thought I was doing as a parent. Either like we're doing the opposite or like didn't matter. Mm-hmm. And in that case, I'm like, we never really said no. We never really put these like huge, and not that I shouldn't say we never said no. We had plenty of boundaries, but like as far as certainly about self-expression, we were not the like, that's too short, that's too this, that's too that, that's too that. These kids wore whatever they wanted, whenever they wanted for the most part. And so it's so interesting that you still had the thought of like, I can do what I want if I buy it myself. Like we weren't letting you.
I think some of that is just like the nature of the beast. Like,
right, that's what I mean. Yeah. Like as parents, we think we're like doing so much, and really it's like, it's a crapshoot sometimes. You think you're doing the right thing, and I'm not saying I wasn't doing the right thing, but I'm just like, it didn't matter. She still heard the like, oh, they're not gonna let me do it if if it's too short or if it's too this or
and
that.
Felt like even just the idea that I could get away with something, like, which I was like Little Miss Narc. Like I was such a rule follower, like goody two shoes, like all these things. And the idea that I know it was half a joke, but just the idea that you guys didn't like something and I was going to be able to do it anyway, that felt powerful to me. That felt great. You. That like
I remember one time as a teenager, Faith came in and like really angry at her dad and I, and she was like, "You're ruining all of my teenage angst," because we weren't giving her anything to be upset about.
Yeah.
So it's just funny that you still felt like you were like, I'm gonna rebel and wear this thing that they never actually told me I wasn't allowed to wear.
With a too low cut back.
So funny.
Mm-hmm. But I think the other, to tie it back to what our...
Yeah, I was like, let's get back to financial.
You also, we had the maturity of your money is your money, and we're not gonna, up until recently when my dad took all my cash from me. But that's mostly just because you guys never have cash and you need cash.
We take cash from her all the time now.
But
it's not like we don't pay you back.
No, you do. Yes, put that on the record. They do pay me back.
We just never have cash. She's like our little ATM.
Idea that my money was my money However, if I got into scrapes, you guys were also willing to like remember that I was 14.
Sure.
Like I remember one time it was like within the first year of having my first bank account, I overdrew it. Like I took more money out than I had in there, and it literally said $.
Yeah.
And I think I called you. I had to call you, or I had to text you.
I got like an alert on my phone. And it was like a kid's account.
Yeah. So that's the other thing, is that like it's not like anything I was doing was secret, because my bank account was attached to her bank account.
And it only let you withdraw because it literally pulled money from my account.
Yes. And I felt, first of all, I felt so guilty. I was like, oh my gosh, the anxiety spiral. It was there at 13, and I just know how to manage it better 10 years later. But at 13, I was like, they're never going to let me have a credit card. They're never going to let me have a debit card. They're going to take my bank account. Like, it was crazy. And I remember texting you saying, I think it was $1. Like I had overdrawn it by $1. Yeah. And I was like, I will give you $1. I have the money. I don't know what happened, but can you please put money in my bank account so that it stops saying that it's $. And you like threw $20 in there and we're like, don't spend it.
I'm sure the bank just did it.
But now at least you have something.
Yeah.
We'll figure it out when you were out. You were like, we'll figure it out. We'll sit down with it when I get home. And knowing that like I was still allowed to, for all the independence I was given financially, that also meant that I was allowed to mess up financially and like spend money on stupid things. Like the amount of pints of ice cream that I bought, I probably could have
lip balms.
Lip balms.
The
that
stupid
I lost.
Circle EOS lip balms or whatever.
Stupid. Or like, just like coffee on my way to school when I definitely didn't need to be buying coffee on my way to school. When I was older, things that I didn't need.
That's privilege.
Yeah.
Is that you worked to sort of take care of yourself. Mm-hmm. And that's privilege, is that you didn't have to worry about anything but coffee on the way to school and gas. I think we made you pay for gas.
Yeah, I had to pay for gas in my car.
So we could do a whole other episode on like what you do with your kids. And I'll tell you what I did was I went and found all of my friends that were financial bloggers and financial parenting bloggers. Mm-hmm. I like went and were like, what do I do? Kelly, how do I do this? How do I set up an account? How do I would call them or email them or whatever and be like, you do this. What do I do with my kids? And so I tried to teach them, but this is more about like now as young adults.
Yes.
What did you like? We even just as not young adults, as adults, my husband and I were walking the other day and his parents are coming to visit and we were talking about all these things like retirement and like when all the things that you have to worry about retirement financially. And we were like jokingly, we're like, when your parents are here, I'd love to like take them out to lunch and be like, please tell us how to be 80 because that's what they're about to be. And we're like, we don't know, like, what do we do? And we feel like we've gotten ourselves here, but we'd love to know like what's next and who can teach us that. And so as a 23-year-old, I'm here. Like, what's, you bought a car this year, you're paying off a student loan, you're thinking about moving out and looking at an apartment. You also don't have the most
like stable,
predictable of jobs. Yeah.
That's the big thing for me. And this is a very singular, I don't know.
I don't know. It's kind of a gig economy in some way.
Everyone's about to become a contract worker. So I think, like, I remember when I bought my car, looking at you in the dealership, pale-faced, sweating. Yeah. And I just was like, I mean, this is all it is. You just make money and then you spend money and then you die. And you were like, that's pretty much it.
But you get to drive a nice car.
But you get to drive a nice car. Can we call my 2023 Corolla nice?
Yeah, there's a lot of people who call that car nice.
And you know what? I call it nice every single time. I'm like, yes.
You love it.
I love my Corolla. Yeah. But I think the thing that, I guess, and this is more of like an existential, is like, do you ever stop being afraid? I feel like I am in a place where I manage, I pay off my car, I pay off my loan, I pay off my credit card every single month. I'm not behind on bills. I'm not accruing more interest than is governmentally necessary, I guess. And still, I am, one bigger, broader theme, do you ever stop being afraid? But I don't really think I have I don't have a savings account. I don't have if I were to get into a car accident, I'm like, I have some money set aside, but it's just money set aside.
Hey, that's better than a lot of people.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. I think where you are right now is tricky because theoretically, in a world where you graduate from college and you get a job that has a paycheck that you can predict, it's much easier than to plan, here's my 30 things that I have to pay every month. Here's the money that's going to go into savings in case I get a flat tire or crash my car or whatever. Here's if I want to take a trip somewhere. Like, you have some predictability in that, but it's hard because you don't know sort of where the next... And this is probably a really common problem, whether you have whether you're an actor or whether you're doing, you're working at Sephora. Like, you don't always know what your money every month is going to look like. And so you're still kind of living like you did in high school and college, where it was like, I just make enough money over the summer to get through the semester, and then I make enough money over Christmas to get through the next semester. Mm-hmm. Like, you're still in that mode, but also your brain is going, okay, well, I'm supposed to be doing something else now. How do I move into this next phase? And as a parent, it's been tricky because I'm like, I don't really know how to tell you exactly what to do because that income isn't predictable, I guess, is really what it is. It's not predictable. And also, as the parent of an artist, I am trying really hard not to make your life about a predictable income because I want you to take time and utilize this privilege of, look, I'm not an actor or director or producer or somebody who can just call a friend and have you get a role like many of the actors of today. But I am somebody who's worked my ass off with your dad to make sure that you have a place to live if you want while you go and pursue these things. You have to pay for the car and you have to pay for your student loan, but that's it. Like, we're not making you... So I want you to take advantage of that. And also, I understand how you're like, I just want to go make money and have a life and all of those things. So it's hard. It's hard as a mom also.
And I think that's becoming like the overwhelming fear amongst people my age is that, look, I joke all the time, and I love my job and I'm really passionate about my job, and still there are times where I'm like, well, if it all fails, I'll just go become an English teacher. And then my friends...
That doesn't require a lot of education.
Yes.
And expertise.
It does.
As a former English teacher.
No, it does.
You can't just go be an English teacher.
But when you are fortunate enough to get to turn your passion into your job...
For sure.
Sometimes it's sometimes helpful to me to have something that I could enjoy just as much that would also provide a consistent schedule and benefits and summers off. Like, the grass is always greener.
Sure. And there's teachers out there listening that are like, this bitch.
Well, I'm just about to say, my friends who went to school to be teachers are still living at their parents' house and don't have a consistent job and are also drowning in student debt and like trying to figure, no one, I think there are
places where that's not the case, but in New Jersey for
definitely
sure,
not.
It's like, I don't know who they hire, but...
And I think that sometimes can breed a little bit of like generational resentment.
For sure.
Because you and Dad have been very open about the fact that out of college, you guys were bad with money.
Well, but also we were like terrified because we basically, our senior year of college, they were like, well, you'll be lucky if you get a job. No one's hiring. We're in this great recession. No one's, and then like we got there and there was this little boom, this little tech boom, and then the whole thing fell out again. So it was like, once we finally thought we had our feet under us, the whole world fell apart again. And it was like, we didn't know how to live. Like, we also couldn't plan because it felt very unpredictable too. We had an income, but we weren't sure how long that was going to last or if it was going to stay that way. And like, there was no such thing as retirement. You just put your money in a 401k and hoped for the best. And like, anyway, it was rough. I hear millennials complain all the time and I'm like, Gen X was just out here doing the exact same thing. I mean, nobody blamed us for the housing crisis, but I think they tried to blame millennials. I think boomers tried to blame millennials for that, but yeah.
And I wonder if some of it too, like, we talked about this in our one of our many dating episodes, that like the information age has actually made it like some of it is that you you just got lucky in that you didn't know all the different ways you could be doing it. Like, do you know what I mean? Like you had like...
I don't know what you mean. Please say more. Okay. What do you mean lucky?
Well, lucky is the wrong word. But I look at people my age across social media and I can see either like 23-year-olds who immediately got a corporate job.
Sure.
Or 23-year-olds who are
door-dashing,
but are able to like scrape together enough money to go to a hostel in Paris for a week. Yeah. Like, or they're living, you know, my best friend worked her butt off and now she lives in LA.
Yeah.
And
still works her butt off.
Still works her butt off. Yeah. Oh, she's a hustler. And there is a little sense of like, I was thinking today, I was like, I fall into my phone and it's always a bad time because I'm looking at all the ways that people are living their lives, quote unquote, better than me at my age. And you think, oh, there's going to be one ticket. And for me, my ticket, my life could be so much better, so much different if I just got a corporate job.
Well, and I was just going to say, when you said, you know, saving money to go to a hostel in Paris or whatever, the comparison game predates the internet.
Yeah.
However, it's gotten worse, I think, because now it's a bunch of strangers. Like, I used to do it with my own friends. I'd be like, how come they can do this and I can't? How come they can do this? We have the same job. How come they're able to do this and I'm not? So, like, that's a tale as old as time, but I'm sure the internet makes it worse because now you have a million strangers and their lives are curated online, so you're only seeing a part of it. But it's the same lesson, which is that those are all choices people make. Like that person in a hostel in Paris might be eating beans out of a can.
Yeah.
Or, you know, the person who has the corporate job might have a bunch of money in savings, but can't spend it because they're, you know, or they're living in a place where their rent is so astronomical that even though they're getting paid a decent amount, it's still not enough for like a life. I think the one sort of universal truth is that no one has enough for what they need unless you're like a billionaire, but I don't know any of those. And so I don't say no one your age. I feel like at 23, there's very few people, unless they're trust fund babies, who have what they need to live sort of the lives that you see on social media. They might have enough to live a pretty good life, but not when they're comparing it to all of the things they're seeing online. So like if someone else were to see your life, they might be like, it's pretty lucky.
Yeah.
You know, she's got a nice place to live. She's got a car of her own. She can come and go as she pleases. She, you know, she gets to do work that she loves and they pay her for it. So, you know, you're not buying like a condo on the top floor of a building, but you're doing okay.
Yeah.
And there's time for some of it too. I think that is a social media risk too, is that it makes it seem like you should have it all figured out by now.
And I was just going to talk about this. We came from such a fast-paced place.
Yeah.
Like the East Coast is, you're going to
it's intense. I use the word intense when I'm trying to describe it to people.
My sister, gonna quote both my siblings. One, my sister, when I was in school and we were prepping to go to New York for our acting showcase, and the woman who ran our acting showcase, I was in love with her because she was this like fast talking New York Manhattanite, everything's a mile a minute. And I was like, my people, I see you. And my friends who were not East Coasters
they were from West Virginia. They're not just East Coasters, West Virginia. They were Appalachians.
They were like, we are scared of her.
So
we don't like her. We think she's a lot. And Danny, my sister, went, oh yeah, we're not an easygoing people. And then my brother this weekend, when we were at an event in Minneapolis where there were all these vendors, and he ended up getting this like thrifted bag that was really exciting. And after we left the thrifted bag stand, he went, I feel like nobody out here is trying to be like the best at thrifting. Like, I feel like I'm probably the only one bartering. Like, I'm trying to be the best at thrifting here, and I don't think anybody else is doing that. And it was a really keen observation because I was thinking, oh yes, nobody is trying to be the best out here. And not to say that like they're trying to be their own personal best.
Yeah.
But it's not
They don't need to prove it to everybody else.
Yeah, they don't need to show everyone.
There's probably Minnesotans out there who are listening to this who are like, are you out of your mind?
Yeah.
But comparatively speaking, it is a far less, I don't even want to say competitive because I've been playing some sports and it is a competitive place.
Oh, yes.
But it is not as intense as out east where it's like everybody has to do everything all the time and prove to you they can do everything all the time.
And if you don't
be the best.
Get it immediately here, you didn't miss your window like you did on the East Coast. Accountability. I missed a bunch of audition signups because I was not on the ball this week. And so all these slots are filled. And I was complaining to my friends that I was like, I'm having a night where I can just
learning this in real
be
time.
A baby. And we found out last night that I had missed all these things. And I was like, oh, I'm such I can't. And one of my friends very earnestly was like, oh, well, did you email? Send an email tomorrow. It's fine. You can be seen. And it's a very
That's wild.
Yeah. But that's the attitude, which again,
Wait, what?
From the East Coast entertainment industry.
Girl. Let's not say
Never.
East Coast entertainment, New York entertainment.
Never. And no one looks at me, I have felt, no one looks at me like I'm less of a performer because I wasn't on the ball for 1 week. Whereas on the East Coast, they would.
Well, there's just
more.
many people that, like, no offense, but they don't care if you missed it. There's like, we got 7,000 other people that we're going to see, so we don't care that you're not coming. Whereas here, it's like, there's just fewer people. I don't know.
And there's less.
All of this has to do with finances, I promise.
We can get, yes.
In that when you can let go of the sort of competitive nature of finances or the comparison nature of finances and really tune into like, what do I want? And that coming back to like budgeting, I know you had said before we even turned the mics on, like, I want to talk about budgeting.
Yeah.
Coming back to the idea of what do you want your life to look like? And then how do you do that financially? And like, look, that can be a depressing thing because it's not going to look like that right now.
And it sometimes means you might have to leave your job that you really like.
Yeah.
And you have to go work a different job where you make more money.
Yeah.
Which is what I might be looking at in the future.
I mean, in the future, but it hasn't even been a year.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, any other questions? What other finance stuff do you want to talk about besides
Well, I think it's...
comparing yourself on the internet?
But yeah, sorry. It always comes back to this, doesn't it, guys? I promise I'll have a different thing to talk about soon. It was just tax season.
Oh, yeah. Well, that was a bit of a snafu on all of our parts because we tried to claim them one last year, all three of them. And there was like weird instances for all three. And we didn't find out until like the 11th hour that they had to file themselves. And so then it was a mess. So we'll be better about helping you do that next year.
Well, here's what I will offer just on like taxes generally of like, this is one thing I wish looking back we had done differently. You guys kind of explained it. I wish I had been more aware in high school what registering me as a dependent looked like. Like, I knew it kind of, but I wished I had known because I definitely would talk to people in college who would talk about getting their tax returns in high school from the jobs that they worked.
They also made more money than you.
Probably.
No, for sure. Because we weighed every year, are the kids going to get a better refund if they do it themselves, or is it going to help us if we claim them? And it always was going to be, you weren't going to get much back.
Yeah.
And so we just claimed you because you weren't going to get, like if you're going to get $25 back, I'm sorry, but we're going to claim you. And this year it so worked out that you guys were all going to, and look, you owed in one case.
Yeah,
so
I did
like,
have to pay money.
it doesn't always work out to your advantage. But if there are kids that are working like all year long at a job and they make $10,000-$15,000, they get a decent refund back at the end of the year. But that wasn't you.
I wished I had known earlier than literally this year when I learned it, that like, I remember looking at my pay stubs in high school and seeing the, YTD and looking at that number and sometimes going, whoa, because I thought that was what I was getting paid that week. And then being like, no, look at the smaller number. And that I almost wished when I had gotten my first actual like pay stub, I had sat down with you guys and looked and seen like, this is what this means. This is what this means.
Good.
This is what this, this is what when it says Social Security, this is what they're taking it out for, rather than like, I remember looking at my paycheck the first time, and we talked about this right when I got my retail job at the mall. And I was about to get my first paycheck, and you said wait until you see the number, or no, I had gotten my direct deposit, but I hadn't been able to access my paycheck. And so I'd gotten my direct deposit, and it was a lot of money for a 17-year-old to have. Yeah. I was, working retail. You don't make nothing. And I told you what the number was. And I remember you going, wait until you see what it could have been. And worst. Then seeing it, and it was like a $200 difference.
Yeah.
And I was like, I will not look at it anymore. Yeah. I will only be happy with what I've got. But I do kind of wish, I learned it through working, and I will working say jobs.
That we kind of dropped the ball on that partially because the direct deposit and like the way you guys all, like when I was 16, I don't know, whenever I was 15, 16, whenever I got my first like actual paying job where I wasn't just like slid some money under, some cash from the priests as I answered their phones and, did stuff like that. However old I was, I came home to my mother, who happened to be a bookkeeper and, worked in accounting, with my forms and was like, what does all this mean? What do I do? What do I declare? And I feel like you guys all did that at work.
Yeah.
Turned the papers in, gave your bank account, and we never saw anything like until the W-2s came at tax time, which we just looked at and compared and figured out like I never saw a paycheck. I never saw, and you didn't really even have to see a paycheck. I mean, you guys had the apps that had the direct deposit, and all three of them pretty much, it was like stuff on their phones. So like, other than setting up bank accounts, we didn't have a lot of touch points to sort of teach you some financial stuff that my mom taught me just by default because I came home and was like, whoa, what are all these papers I have to fill out? Mm-hmm. And yeah, so that, like you just said that and I was like, oh yeah, that would have been a smart thing to do. And I didn't do it with a single one of you because I never even saw a pay stub.
Yeah. And so much of my early work experience was, I was babysitting.
Right,
so
it's
like
cash, yeah.
Cash, or even I remember asking you guys like, can you help me make a Venmo? Because that, nobody has cash anymore. Yeah. So much of it was like people just would Venmo you. Yeah. And then and there was no like register. Like these kids had bank accounts and they would go to the ATM and I'd be like, please track that stuff. Yes.
But there was no paper thing anymore. Mm-hmm. So, there's budgeting software and there's all that other stuff. But I don't know.
I now do so much
confusing.
I write out, I'm like, monthly expenses minus monthly income equals.
Yeah. I mean, look, whatever works. I have over the years had 18, I've tried every YNAB and every different budgeting software in the world. And I always come back to a notebook because it just helps me. And I'm not talking about like for bigger things now, but like for monthly bills and expenses and things like that, I always come back to paper and pencil because it just works for my brain. So part of financial, like personal finance is figuring out like what can you wrap your head around? I have friends that are like spreadsheet queens. They have it all worked out. They know how to do the formulas to figure out if they save this much, when they'll be able to get this much. And that's brilliant. And I had somebody make me one for my work, for my office, because I was like, I don't know how to do this, but I need to track, my taxes and everything else for work. So I had I paid someone to make me that spreadsheet. But for personal stuff, I've always just relied on a good old moleskin. I buy a new one every year.
And that's one of the things that like you tell me this often, and one of these days I'll actually learn it, is that I think it is a little what works for you is what works.
Yes.
Like and this is from a young person perspective, to all the young people listening. I definitely, I went to a STEM high school and I got an acting degree. So my high school was incredible. It was a really, really great place to go. And I probably had about a month, maybe 2 months out of every school year where I was like, I'm the dumbest girl here because I wasn't good with numbers and I wasn't great at science. And sometimes
she got almost all
that
A's,
can still,
folks.
the only B was in math. Yeah. And sometimes that can still translate, particularly when you're doing things, quote unquote, simply, like having a notebook. A notebook works for me. Even like mine is a sticky note that I put on my desk. And I'm like, this is how much money I have. This is how much money I need to make to cover all my bills. And that's what's helpful for me. I need to be able to see it. And I spent some time in college thinking like only idiots do it this way. I can't believe it can't be this simple. And I think that's a very Gen Z trait of like, if it's not hard, we don't think it's like worth doing. Or
no,
like
it's
we
smart
have to,
people.
yeah.
It's smart people. I hate to say that, but that's universal, that if a lot of things in your life are easy for you, you think that you must be doing them wrong or you're dumb. When in reality, no, it's just working. And there's somebody else for whom like the elaborate spreadsheet works. And that doesn't make them smarter or less smart than you. It's just what works for you. But because things come relatively easily or like intuitively, it can feel like, oh, well, if it's that simple to me, then it must be because I'm not smart enough for something more sophisticated or something.
And
that's not your generation, I hate to tell you.
In the age,
I wish it were.
True. And in the age of the optimize, it can definitely feel like if you don't have the fanciest like finance, sometimes also it's being able to see through the grift of like something fancy and financial to help you like color code your budget or doing all these things. And not to say you don't need that, but I would encourage my fellow Gen Zers to try the free way first. Well, and if the free way doesn't work,
if it works for you,
and
if it doesn't, when Faith first came to me and said, I want to talk about budgets, I was like, I think of budgets like I think of diets. And like, you can't be extreme, you can't be all or nothing or it won't last. You can't like deprive yourself of everything. And I'm talking about budgeting when you have money to be budgeted. I know that and I was this way for a long time. There was no such thing as a budget. It was like, just make enough money to pay the bills that are coming in every month and feed your kids. We had years like that. And so there was no budgeting. It was like, if something happened, we put it on a credit card because that was the only thing we had. And then we hoped we'd be able to pay off the credit card sometime before we died. And so I'm talking about when you have enough money to cover what you need to cover, and then you can do something with it. And if you are lucky enough to be in that kind of position and you're trying to say like, if you want to save for something bigger, or if you're trying to pay off debt, like doing it in such a way that is sustainable is really important. Whatever that means for you. It doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to look like the person next to you. And it doesn't even have to look like you 6 months ago. Like it can change as the seasons go, and maybe a spreadsheet works and maybe a notebook works and maybe whatever. You have to be able to do it. And you have to understand what you're doing. A lot of these new, you talk about like the most sophisticated, the most whatever. It's like hands off your own money at that point. Just like the paychecks and the that was such an eye opener to me that I'm like, oh yeah, you never really learned about what all those little columns are on the paycheck because we never saw the paychecks. Mm-hmm. Same thing if you have like technology sort of doing all of the work for you of budgeting or moving your money. Like if you don't have your hands in it, it's hard. And I'm not saying everybody needs a notebook and pen, but like you should have a relationship with your money, the incoming and outgoing of your money, and not automate every single bit of it, because nobody else cares about your money the way you care about your money. So if you leave it up to somebody else or something else to take care of, I mean, our taxes this year were a case in point. Like somebody else prepares our taxes and they at the 11th hour realized that they couldn't be done the way that it was done last year. And then they messed up something else. And I had to go and do the cleanup of their mess up because it's not their money. They don't care. So.
And I think too that this is the other tricky thing about it is money is still such a taboo topic, particularly.
For sure.
Like I was taboo when you were 23. It's taboo when I'm 23. No one wants to talk about it.
And especially women, and especially if you don't feel like you're quote unquote good at it.
Yeah.
There's so many more. There's so many more that's one huge benefit for your generation. Mm-hmm. More people are talking about it and more women are talking about it. Mm-hmm. And more women are talking to women about it.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
And still, that can be, it can feel...
It's still intimidating.
It's still intimidating, and it can feel, this is going to, super privileged take. I feel like I should have a sign that's like, super privileged take.
We need this, like...
Yes, it needs to be a neon sign that I can flash.
Like the guy on Parks and Rec.
I have been on both ends of a money conversation where I have felt bad. I have been in situations where I have been the person without the money to do the thing, and I have felt bad. And I have been in situations where I have been the only person with enough money to do the thing, and I have felt bad. And such is the nature of the beast of being a woman, there's no winning.
Yeah.
You never, if you don't have any money, that's sometimes a way to commiserate, but guess what? You still don't have any money, and it still sucks that you can't do that thing. And if you do have money, that means sometimes that you're like excluded from the people who don't have money because they think that you're hoity-toity.
Yeah.
And then what's the point of even doing the thing if you can't? So like I get myself into sticky situations because I just start paying for people.
Yeah.
And then I'd be like, how did that dinner cost me?
I don't have that much money.
I don't have that much money. But whatever. Put the card down. It's fine. We'll worry about it later. So I think being honest with yourself first about where do you want to spend your money, and growing comfortable with, and this is again like super privileged take, but growing comfortable with the money that you have and the means that you have. And weirdly, I'm thinking about Rory Gilmore in Gilmore Girls as like a perfect example of someone who was not comfortable with the privilege she had because she grew up with a single mom, and they had this tiny home, but she actually was afforded all of these privileges. And yes, she was sometimes the poor kid at the rich school, but...
Well, she was afforded all those privileges because her mother went back to her rich parents and said, I need your help.
Yes.
So...
And being in a position at 23, and it's not going to be easy. It's not easy. I'm actively learning it. Where you can say... Hey, I'm comfortable acknowledging that there are things that are actively making my life easier. I don't have to, I'm living with my parents. The amount of times I have told people in this past month, well, I followed the free rent and just kind of owned that. And that sometimes feels like a real bad thing to say. And I have had more people older than me, more successful than me, different walks of life I would say either, oh, that's a great call. And I had somebody say, when I was mentioning like, I think I want to move out, but I'll be honest, it's hard to do that. We get along really well. I have my own space. I have my own car. It's not hard, but it's difficult to think about moving out and having to take on a lot of financial responsibility when I'm sitting in a place where I don't have to take on a lot of financial responsibility, and it affords me more opportunities to go work for only $100 and have a super flexible schedule and all these other things. And as I found myself explaining this to a virtual stranger, somebody I had met basically that day, they said, that it's always hard to leave a situation like that. I completely understand. I'm in the same boat with the roommates I'm currently living with. And it's a really easy situation to be in. And even if I think maybe I should move on, I have a really hard time doing that. And you would be shocked how many people understand you when you give them the opportunity to understand you. And I think
most
that's
people.
Yes.
I mean, when we were sort of in the thick of, we meaning your dad and I, were in the thick of the financial...
I was 9.
Not even. We were in the thick of the financial, rebuilding years, as I like to call them. I was also right in the thick of blogging, and I wrote a piece I think this is how it came about. I was at a conference, a blogging conference, that I bankrupted myself to go to. And I was in a financial literacy small group thing, with sponsored by Chase Bank or something. So there was a panel of people talking about how do you make a living doing what we're doing. And I think I stood up and said, I don't even remember. I stood up and said, look, I'm clawing my way out of debt, and I am tired of pretending that's not true. I'm going to start writing about it, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, long story short, a person from Huffington Post, back when it was like prestigious to write for Huffington Post, I don't think it is anymore. She came up to me and said, she was from Chase. And she came up to me and said, we're partnering with Huffington Post. I would love for you to write what you just talked about. And so I did. I wrote a post for Huffington Post about...
I remember this because this was a big deal.
It was a big deal, and it was about being in debt and getting ourselves in debt. And, there was some blame to go around. It wasn't just our fault. There was a housing crisis and all kinds of other things, and getting ourselves into it and getting ourselves out of it. And being honest about that. And, I had to talk to your dad to be like, hey, guess what? I'm going to put us on blast because this is not an anonymous post. And
you get your own neon sign.
And I got lambasted in the comments for, everything you can think of. Imagine putting your financial shit on the internet and what people do to you. So I got lambasted. But I also got a lot of people, not as many in public, but a lot of people that would come up to me or privately message me and thank me for being honest, for saying the thing they were feeling too, for being in the same situation and saying it out loud. It was like I freed up people to be like, oh my God, it's not just me. And finally, we can start talking about this, because if we can start talking about how we got here, then we can all talk collectively about how to get out of it and how to do it differently. And there's something very liberating about saying it out loud. So I found myself from that moment forward saying to friends, like, I can't afford to do that, but I'd love to have you to my house, like if they were all going over. And they all were like, oh, this is wonderful. Like, thank you for being the person who says, like, I don't have the money right now. I have to be able to do this instead if you want to hang out. Because then they all were like, same. Yeah. same. And so you're right. There is a taboo, but once you feel okay being like, yeah, this shouldn't be taboo. Like, money should not be something that we are afraid to talk about, because it isn't something that defines who we are. And once you can let go of that, like, my identity is not how much money I make or don't make. My identity is something completely separate from the capitalistic machine that helps me make or not make money. Once you can get through that, it just opens up so much more. Your relationships are richer. Everything just gets better about life after that. It was awful. I didn't like reading that stuff about myself on the internet. But the rest of it, the real life experience, was just as good.
And the very Gen Z take on what you just said is also that I think you're exactly right. And the more that the world becomes more expensive, the more that the cost of living rises and the minimum wage stays the same, there will be a correlation and causation of people not wanting you to talk about money. And I think that
the people who have it all don't want you talking about money.
This is what I'm going to say, is that the more that we as, people with means, but not as many means, are able to say, like, let's have this conversation about money and let's talk to you. Let me say, I can't really afford to do that right now. Let me be the first person who does that. It makes us stronger in the face of the people who have all the money, who would like us to be at each other's throats, so we don't realize that they're the ones that are causing all the issues.
Yeah.
So if you are my age and you're like, I don't want to talk about money, just think of it as rebelling against the man. That by saying,
be honest about your finances.
Be honest about your finances. In protest of people who want you to never talk about anything remotely vulnerable ever, because it might mean that you make a human connection that is more powerful than a machine can give you. And that would be terrifying to them.
Well, I feel like we need to end there.
Yeah.
Also, we've been yapping
Mic
forever.
drop. Yeah.
So I don't really know if we gave you any kind of valuable anything, or I gave you any kind of valuable anything about finances.
You know what I think we did is,
this is the perspective of Gen Z and Gen X on finances.
And at least you gave me I think every so often I needed to be reminded by my mom that things are going to be fine. And not that you're...
It's all a lie.
Well, no.
I sometimes don't believe it either.
Not that you're coming to save me, but that things are going to be fine.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's the big... money is the way in. We talk a lot about, like, money buys choices. It doesn't buy happiness, but money buys choices. And...
Which can lead to happiness. Anybody who ever says money doesn't buy happiness...
You're wrong.
Has always had a lot of money.
You're wrong. And I think that sometimes having someone who has been around longer tell you, things are going to be fine. is all you need to be able to like take the step to do the scary thing. So like you and I had that conversation about budgeting, and I was like, oh, okay, so maybe the way I'm doing it works.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think things are gonna be fine is too simple, because that makes it seem like you don't have any power.
Yeah.
Because like things aren't gonna be fine. Like no one else
Maybe,
no one else is rescuing you, but I believe you can figure it out. Yeah.
There's a on my little magnet board that I have in my room, I wrote, "You'll think of something."
Yeah.
And that feels like what this, every so often I need somebody to remind me, you'll think of something.
Yeah.
So I hope that this is our reminder to you listeners that you'll think of something. Like,
and I will end with this, because you said it before and I never responded to it. Yes, you do stop being afraid. So that's what we got.
do we have to do a
I
wonder?
don't know if I have wonder, other than I think my wonder this week would be being able to talk about money in a fully calm nervous system state, because that is not something I used to be able to do even 5 years ago. I was not able to. So you do stop being afraid, because you sort of conquer. If you do your own work, if you kind of extricate your identity from money, if you learn your money story and how your patterns are and what you can do and what your triggers are, because look, money's traumatic, especially if you've ever not had it or you've been worried about it or any of those things. And so if you can pull yourself out of that trauma and have money be a thing that doesn't have that kind of energy, then you do stop being afraid. And so my wonder right now is the fact that I've gotten to a place in my life where I can have conversations about it. It's not to say I don't worry about it still. I mean, look, I just talked about how I want my in-laws to teach me how to be old. Mm-hmm. So there's still a lot more, but I had that whole thing happen with the IRS and taxes and the bank. And 5 years ago, that would have sent me into a total
I was like, you handled that really well.
Because I have a childhood trauma around the government and money. And so that would have sent me into a tailspin years ago. And I have sort of made peace with some of that. So I was able to handle it and realize like, they're not the big bad people who are going to come and steal my house from me. Anyway, so that's my wonder, is like, you can heal.
Yeah.
Anyway.
My wonder this week is the little girl I nanny for.
Oh, she's always your wonder.
Yes. I'm not going to say her name, but she is at a wonderful developmental moment where she's learning how to have conversations, and she knows how to talk, but she is like figuring out how the patterns and the rhythms of conversations work. And it's just a really cool thing to get to witness.
So fun.
As she kind of puts together, like she spent all day, not all day, but a lot of yesterday telling me jokes that she had heard and like kind of messing them up. Or she would take a joke and she would change the words of the joke so that it would not make sense, but she would hit the rhythm of the punchline the same, so I knew when to laugh. And that is a skill. So it's just been very cool to like get to be in her life and like watch her grow. I've been her nanny since November. So it's like we're coming up on 6 months. And it's been really cool to like watch her grow up and get to be there and get to, swap jokes back and forth. I feel like I have a little pal.
That's fun.
Yeah. So that's my wonder.
And I don't have anything to share reading, watching, listening to, because I'm not. I have not had time. It's nice out in Minnesota lately. Well, today was freaking freezing, but but it's been nice out, and so we've spent a lot of time outside.
I said to my brother, your son, not our brother.
He is my son.
That cute, because he was like, why is it so cold? And I was like, this is the thing about Minnesota. They give you one nice day and then they take it away from you.
In fairness, everybody I've talked to in New Jersey is having the same issues.
Yes.
So it was like 100 there today. Oof. So I wouldn't trade that either.
Yeah. I've been listening to Ray's song Click Clack Symphony and also her song Where's My Husband. It's just good.
Sure. That's so fun.
Just good fun.
That's a generational cross-cultural phenomenon. I love that song. I can't sing it. That's the difference between Gen X and Gen Z. Right before we got on here, she was singing it, and I was like, I cannot.
In other words,
my mouth doesn't move that fast. So that's a fun song, though.
Yeah.
All right, that's all we got, folks. Till next week. Keep looking for the wonder in the weeds.
Take care of yourself.
Bye.